It's time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's King of the Couch back in your ear holes for another week of the King of the Couch podcast. I'm sitting here tonight. I've got a guest, a lovely fucking guest on the show tonight. I know this guy from way back, looked up to him. He's somewhat of a riff lord, a musician, a genius in my eyes, but he's from a famed band I used to follow, Hell City Glamours. He's in a band called Mucho Sonar, sound engineer, the works. Mayhem. How are you, man?
I'm good, mate. I'm very well.
I'm getting good at those intros. They
I was just thinking, mate, it must have been hard for you to look up to me, being that I'm quite short.
Yeah, dude. I know, it's good. It was nice actually meeting you guys back in the day, and you could see these people. Everyone looks like a god on stage, and they're like massive and just ultra huge. And then you go and see people in real life, and you're like, well, you're just like a human being, an extremely talented human being, but you're just a human being nonetheless. Man, blast from the past. It's awesome. I really appreciate you coming on the show. I feel like I've known you. I mean, the first time I saw Hell City Glamours was probably, what am I, 33 now? Like 10, 12 years ago. When did you guys start Hell City Glamours? This is going back like some time, right?
Right. So Hell City was going from about 2002.
Yeah.
And that was before I was in the band.
Mm-hmm.
And they were rubbish.
Yeah.
But like I just moved back to Sydney, and Robbie, the drummer, was like the drummer in the first band that we ever had when we were like 15 or something like that,
Yeah.
We had this punk band called Outright. And funny because there's a punk band called Outright nowadays, a more hardcore band, but like they're actually good and we weren't.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Robbie was like the drummer in my first band and stuff. And I knew that they had this rock and roll band going, that was like all about like, really like hip thrusting kind of rock and roll. And I've been playing, when I was up in uni, I played in a bunch of like melodic punk bands, and I was so sick of that whole scene. And like I'd always been like a massive like rock and roll fan and loved like soul music and myriad of other like 70s hard rock and all this kind of stuff. So like I messaged him one day when I was on the toilet at work, saying, look, you need me in your band. And
Yeah.
and then started jamming off. Yeah. And that was about like, I think it was like 2003 or 2004. Yeah. And and yeah, we started going from there. We released like an EP in like 2004 or early 2005. But yeah, that's when we really started going. And like, because I'd been in other bands before, I kind of knew what to do, if that makes sense, in terms of like what it takes to be in a band, like how the mechanics of all of that work. So yeah, like everything kind of, when I joined, we started sort of here, and everything just kept on improving really fast,
Yeah.
That's something I was really proud of in Hell City in general, is that as a band, I feel like we always just kept on getting better right up until the end, like, so that was kind of cool,
Yeah, man, you guys, like, again, just being a total fan, but like when I come across you guys back in the day, and I was thinking about this actually, I'm like, how did because this is like almost pre-social media. I mean, there was probably MySpace, but there was no Facebook or Instagram and things like that. And I'm pretty confident I was walking through the valley or the city in Brisbane, and I saw the poster. I actually remember nicking it from the show, or that's the street, I think, even at the time. And it had you guys on there. I'll dig it out and send you the photo, man. You'll know exactly the one. But it was a pretty old school one, and you guys were playing at the Milton Alley Bar in Brisbane.
Oh wow, was it at the Alley Bar?
Yeah, and I look, 2006 I finished high school, so it must have been like around 2007, 2008 potentially. I'm not sure, but I was young. Yeah, I was young. I mean, I knew I could drink, so I definitely was 18, right? And I said to a mate, my mate Simon, who used to come to the shows with me, the tall, skinny dude. I said, dude, he just started getting in guitar. You know, he was like a full DJ, like loved it. I see he got a Wu-Tang shirt. He fully loves Wu-Tang and
Yes,
stuff.
I am wearing a Wu-Tang shirt.
Yeah, yeah, shout out. And yeah, and then he just all of a sudden he heard Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page, and was like, "Fuck!" He swapped his decks for a an SG copy, and that was it. Now he's just like, "I'm going the rock and roll route." So I said, "Man, you got to come see this band. I don't know what they sound like, but they look cool, and the name sounded cool." And that was it. And they had the like the poster in the background, the logo, and I was like, "We've got to go." And I remember just we had the drinks, man. We strolled into the Milton Alley bar, and the first person I saw as we opened the door was Oscar, the singer, and I was just like, I was starstruck. I was just like, what the fuck? And I remember vividly him being like, because you guys had that awesome sort of like you really put it on, you know, like you really looked rock and roll. Like I think we both like are into the whole Sunset Strip band and the whole '70s sort of glam appeal thing. And I walked in and he was like there with like the shirt like unbuttoned, like cut down. He had like the flared jeans on, like the belts, the jewelry and all this stuff, the cool hat. And as I sort of scanned down the body, went to the feet, he had just pluggers on, like authentically Australian, just like thongs. And I was like, wow, this is an Aussie glam band here tonight for sure. So that was my first time meeting you guys, and you guys literally just like blew the roof off that place. And I think I saw you another shit, man, maybe like 4 or 5 times. I remember like you guys were just like out and out, so nice to everybody, but like especially us. I thought, you know, as a young dude, I was like, fuck, these guys are cool. Like I actually was like, yeah, they're my friends. I'd tell people like, yeah, we know this band. You know, we drink with them and stuff.
Well, it's funny because like, yeah, I mean, the look thing was definitely like, I look back at photos of that and we're all wearing like one too many belts and
Yeah,
one too many pieces of jewelry. Not that there can be too many pieces of
no.
jewelry. But yeah, no, that's definitely the thing. And it's weird because at the time, like when we started, Sydney was so like indie and like wanting to be in the NME and like trying to be like British indie as opposed to like, and so for us, like this Hell City thing was like really like to get in people's faces about like being like a really out and proud like rock and roll band, you know, with all of that look and everything else like that. And part of the thing that why I wanted to join the band was because like it was like, yes, they dress like rock and roll stars. It's funny because I'm wearing a Wu-Tang shirt and like it, like apart from like a little bit of hair metal when I was like 5, hip hop was the first thing that I was actually really into. Like late 80s, early 90s, like I was like into hip hop like as a little kid. Like I used to have like a flat top and like I had like lines shaved into my head and that, like, you know, I was all about that. And then, you know, alternative music and punk hit and that changed. But it's funny what you're saying about like, oh, we're all really nice. It's because we all grew up in like punk bands and like into punk rock, but not like punk rock in terms of like Machine Gun Kelly doing a pop punk album or whatever.
Oh, dude, that's like the bane of my existence at the moment. Hey, I'm just like Travis Barker must just literally be rolling in billions of dollars right now because of this. But
he's the drummer for hire for everyone. But you know, like we grew up in like where punk was like your local scene, you know, in terms of, you know, you put out, you did your own band, you went to shows, you know, it was like way more like a community thing. So we always came from that background. So there was never like, even though we dressed like rock stars and sometimes acted like it when it came to like extracurricular activities, it was never about that in terms of like not wanting to, you know, wanting to distance yourself from the people in the audience. You know, we're always all about like who's drinking with us after the gig, you know, like let's hang out, let's party, let's have a good time. And
that's it. Which is
you know,
really cool. Oh man, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's that whole like, especially the punk thing of the whole, you know, do it yourself. Like, you know, you're writing the music, you're learning how to play the instruments, you're learning how to perform, which is something that you guys did very well. but if you're a human being at your core, you know, like, and I do it with the show too. Like when someone takes the time to listen to your music or come to a show or spend money on a CD or a T-shirt or whatever it is, like myself, like I'm incredibly grateful that someone like takes an hour out of their day to listen to my show or has bought a hat or a T-shirt. You're like, you know, and you're just like, you're almost like, now I owe you something else. Like I have to keep going. So you are like incredibly grateful for it. I guess you guys must have had the same
Yeah,
thing
1000,
back in the day.
1000%, man. And like, you know, we got to play with a lot of like greats. Like,
Mm,
you know, we got to, you know, and the really great ones never lose that, I
yeah.
found. Like, for example, we did like a run of dates with Paul Stanley on his solo tour out
Yeah,
here.
I wanted to run through some of the bands because I remember like even back in the day thinking about it, but I forgot. Yeah, you did the whole Paul Stanley show, didn't you?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was amazing because Paul came up to us he came into our band room, because one thing we did as a band was we never like whenever we supported bigger artists or whatever, we never tried to like hang out and party.
Mm,
We were like there to do our show. If we'll absolutely talk, but we're not trying to like hassle you and be your best friend either. Like, you know,
mm,
we're just like, you know, we're like fairly respectful like that. But the first night of the tour, like Paul Stanley came in and introduced himself to all of us. Like before we played, we got treated like absolute gods by all of his crew. You know, nothing
mm.
was out too hard for them, you know, in terms of their stage setup and things like that. Like I needed the monitor speakers moved because how they had it set up was for like a backing band, which is like at the back of the stage, and we're always like three at the front, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, can we move them? And they were like, yeah, for sure. Next night it's taped off and they just moved the speakers like for our show and then put them back where they needed to be for their show. You know what I mean? Like just nothing was out of the ordinary. But one thing that really like impressed me was he'd do sound checks for his fan club.
Mm.
And in his sound checks, he'd basically put on a whole nother show and play songs that he wasn't playing that night at the gig
Wow.
for his fan club. And then he would not leave that venue until everybody had something signed or a photo or whatever. And you know, like he just actually genuinely loves that and is genuinely grateful. Unlike, say, his bandmate Gene Simmons,
Yeah.
you know, but like Paul on his solo tour, like he'd watch a sound check, you know, like he was there and grateful and appreciative. And
Yeah.
like I found that with quite a lot of the like bigger ones, like the ones who are great
Yeah.
were always like were just like that. They were just appreciative that people liked their music and were stoked
Yeah.
that people were stoked on them. You know what I
That's
mean?
yeah, that's so cool, man. And I think it's so nice too. Like when you must look up to someone as a musician or you like their music, you know, and then they are just a genuine like person. You're like, fuck, you're cool, you know. And I guess too, like most musicians are just music lovers that you learn how to play instruments. You know what I mean? And they're just totally stoked. Like the amount of shows that I've gone to, and you probably noticed this too. Like the band that you're there to watch, like they're sort of milling about somewhere in the crowd or on a veranda somewhere watching the support bands. Like they've got like that almost like an invested interest to go, want to see this band as well. Like as a fan, you know, like I'm keen to see how they go, sort of thing. It's cool. And like you'd be standing there and going, that's fucking. I went to the Wild Hearts once, and it was like Ginger Wild Heart was just like right over there. I seen Mastodon once, and it was like Brent Hinds was over there, and you're just like,
Yeah.
they're just fans at the end of the day, you know. So I think that's really cool. But who were some of the other bands that you got to? I remember you guys did the Angels tour when they did like their farewell tour, wasn't it?
Well, that was like it was like the reforming of the face-to-face lineup of the Angels. I hope I got that right. So it was like a proper Angels lineup from
Yeah,
that era, you know, which is like Buzz Biztrip on drums and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so like the Angels, we played with Rose Tattoo a bunch of times. We played with Living Color. We played with
oh
Paul
really?
Stam. Yeah, Living Color was cool. Living Color
Yeah,
was super.
that
Those
would.
dudes were all super nice. Those guys
Yeah,
were so sweet.
they're a great
Um,
band, man. Like there's just something about them too. Like they're you know, like I just they're just a really cool band. Like, you know, and you wouldn't pick it, you know. So
They're just
it's
monster musicians. Yeah, so like the Angels tour, we did like several months on tour with the Angels, which was cool.
yeah.
Sebastian Bach from Skid Row.
He
Then
looks
you
super nice, like Sebastian Bach. I've got him on Instagram, and he's got that like that funny sort of like high pitched voice, but he just seems like such a sweetheart in the way he talks to like his
well,
Instagram and stuff. You know?
we were all massive Skid Row fans, so like for us that was like super super cool.
Yeah,
And like people sometimes knock Baz as a dude, but like to be his support band on tour with him, he is fucking lovely.
yeah,
Like he is such like it's so funny because me and Robbie specifically are well, all of us are massive Skid Row fans, but I think Robbie and I maybe a little bit more. And I remember walking into the backstage at the Enmore, and there's Baz like towering over Robbie, and Robbie's like 6 foot something as well, probably 6 foot, and Baz is like towering over him, going, "Hey man, I'm Sebastian. What's your name?" And Robbie's like, "Robbie." And he's like,
yeah.
"All right, you guys are doing the whole tour, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." It's like, "We're gonna party."
Oh, fuck, man, that would be so because he is a fucking massive dude. Hey, I've seen him. Me and a mate, like this
Cool.
mate of mine, who's honestly not really that into rock. I don't know how he got onto Slave to the Grind, but he's always just like every couple of months he'll just like link me Slave to the Grind. He's like, "Oh man, this is so good." I'm like, "Yeah, of course it is, man."
That
It's
album is sick, dude. Like people like might say, "Oh, Skid Row are just like a hairband or whatever." But if you listen to Slave to the Grind, despite the fact that it's got like 3 power ballads on it,
mm,
it is an awesome hard rock heavy metal album. Like you can see why they took Pantera on tour with them
yeah.
back in the day. Like, the song Slave to the Grind, there's a pretty clear through line from that to Pantera. Like it's not that much different. You know what I mean? Like
Nah, I agree. They're a bit heavier than your average sort of like hair metal band, and I think too like like I love that scene. You know what I mean? Like I've been on a massive Motley Crue bender at the moment. I don't know what it was. I was actually Shinbone Star.
oh yeah,
He said to say hi, and we were talking recently, and he must have said something about Motley Crue. I was like, yeah, Motley Crue. So I was like, I've just been on a bender ever since I talked to him like 2 weeks ago. But then it's made me just go through and I was listening to Skid Row and stuff. And yeah, those albums are like, they're really good. Like, they get boxed in because of that image. And then there's other bands too that just like towered above them, like Guns N' Roses and stuff like that, that sort of they just went to like new heights. But there's so many good bands in that scene that are
yeah.
just like, they're
There's a,
really good. Like,
there's a
yeah.
lot of terrible ones too, but
Yeah.
it's funny. Like you just mentioned, Motley Crue. We actually one of our earliest big. Oh, we played with Alice Cooper. That's another one.
Yeah. How
Um,
is he? He looks like an awesome dude.
we never actually got to meet Alice.
Really?
Weirdly enough.
Yeah.
It's just the randomness of how that gig went. But
Mm.
Alice actually requested us for his next Australian tour for the whole tour,
Yeah.
and we had to say no
Oh,
because one of our band members was overseas at the time.
gutted. How gutted?
Yeah,
Who?
and he
Oh,
asked us for the whole tour, and then he ended up getting Billy Thorpe, like, which is pretty cool. But like, I never met Alice. I met his daughter. She was cool,
yeah.
and met some of his band and stuff. But yeah, you're mentioning Motley Crue. We supported Nicky's side band, Brides of Destruction, that he had with Tracy Guns and him.
Yes, dude. I fucking loved Rise of Destruction. That first album was just,
Yeah.
it was so obnoxious. Like, it was just so, I mean, it was so Nicky Six, right? Like, and he's just like almost, he's just got his own shtick. Like, you know exactly what you're gonna get. And that first song, I think it's called "Shut the Fuck Up." It just opens the album. You're like, I know exactly what I'm in for here for the next 10 tracks. And it's just, I love bands like that you kind of like, you don't have to, you can just put it on, crack some drinks. You really don't have to think about it too much. It's not like a prog album. You're just like, I'm just gonna party here, dude. Just fucking break some shit and have a good time.
you know, it all has its place. And I think, it's funny is that after those gigs, that was so early on in Hell City. Like, we used to print our own shirts and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And for the rest of that tour, apparently the singer, I can't remember his name now, but he was rocking a Hell City shirt all over Europe and stuff like that.
That's so
But,
cool.
oh,
It
we
must be
played with
surreal.
played with LA Guns, the various versions, because there was a couple of different versions of
Yeah,
them.
wasn't there? There's a Tracy Guns, LA Guns, and then there's like Phil. I can't think of his last name. That he's got his own version as well, right?
There was a Tracy version and a Phil version. Now there's just one, I think. But like we loved LA Guns first two records when we were really like early days of Hell City.
Mm.
And Tracy's a lovely dude.
Yeah,
The Phil Lewis version were a pack of dicks for the
Yeah.
most part.
yeah,
But Tracy's version were really nice. And Tracy was lovely because he remembered us from when we played with them with Brides years before. And he was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, man, you guys were babies then. You're daddies now. It
yeah.
was like lovely. But it's weird because you're talking about that whole Sunset Strip stuff.
Mm.
People used to always call a lot of like indie kind of music press, that was like the thing to like question everybody's authenticity.
Mm.
Like young dudes with long hair playing rock and roll is so inauthentic.
Yeah.
But like we were actually like really specific about what we liked and what we didn't like. For example, when in our early days, I remember like jumping over a table at some guy who was yelling at us, because we used to get yelled at on the street for how we looked. Like people would yell out like band names to us.
Yeah.
And one guy yelled Poison, and I was like really drunk, and I was like, that's it. And I like jumped over the table trying to grab it.
Yeah.
And like the other guys were like grabbing me away. But this is like a long time ago.
Yeah, you could have said Skid Row. You had to go with
They're so
Poison.
good, man. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, so like there was heaps of those bands that we hated, but we were really specific about the ones that we loved,
Yeah.
like, so I hate Poison, can't stand Winger and Warrant and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But
there was
we
a lot of the bands I didn't get into. Poison weren't too bad. Like they had a few classic. They just had some of those songs that were just like way too catchy that you couldn't help be like,
dude, I'm
you know.
nowadays I'm much more warm to Poison than I was when I played in like a glam band, like,
Yeah.
I still have a music player because I like to listen to like full scale audio. So like
Yeah.
I like to listen to like, I don't like if I'm listening for pleasure, I want to listen to like the full file. I don't like MP3s, even though like I've got a Spotify and everything, and
Yeah.
it's mostly Wiggle songs at the moment because of my son.
Yeah. We'll probably cover, because you're a sound engineer, mate, so you're a purist. I know you the Spotify Wrapped, which has just gone on recently, and I feel your pain because I think I had something appear in mine. I know it was Cocomelon or fucking Peppa Pig, but you're just like, oh shit,
Yeah,
the
no,
Wiggles,
mine
man,
was all
get hammered.
mine was all my son's, because I've got the music player. I listen to my music
Yeah.
on that mostly, and that plays waves and it sounds really nice. But this is actually just totally random as an aside to that. Well, firstly, Poison came up on that music player because I've got some like best of or something, or I don't know, someone gave me the CDs and I ripped it and put it on.
Yeah.
And I think it's called Fallen Angel, the song came on. And like that song's fucking awesome. Like
Yeah.
it's like, even though Bret Michaels sound like, there's so many cliches that he goes through in the verses, that chorus is just so fucking undeniable
Yeah.
that you can't fuck with that. But like, don't tell anybody I like Poison.
Yeah,
Except
no,
for
we
your
won't. We'll edit that. We'll edit that out. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that, and I just
No,
said shit.
don't edit that. There's only two types of music in the world: it's good and shit, and that one was good.
No,
But,
I won't edit it. I'll be honest, that was a joke. I can't edit that out. It'd be just too hard. Now it's funny you mentioned that. Shinbone put a photo up the other day, and he was literally listening to a Poison record. He loves it. He must love them, hey.
Oh, mate, he definitely loves all that stuff. But the music player thing, right, is like, I read a study years ago. It's not just about like, because I produce bands and I mix bands and like stuff like sound engineering and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I read this thing ages ago. There was like a study into the emotional response of people. Like, it was a study, and it was like emotional response of people to sound, and the comparison between a full scale wave and MP3 and the different variations, and like the wave actually made people feel better
Really?
across the study. And I've tried it before because I was listening to like, an iPod, and I was something, this is years ago, right?
Yeah.
I'm listening to like an iPod Classic, and it's like some ripped, like whatever that format was, but it was like compressed. And I'm like, man, I've got this CD in my car. Like, why don't I just put on the CD? And I put on the CD, and I wasn't listening to the artifacts of what the compression had done, but what it did to me was significant in terms of how I felt. Like I felt like my chest swelling, like it like really resonated on a deeper level that was really strange. And it wasn't like a placebo or anything. It just felt so much better. It felt like emotionally satisfying. And there's this idea, right, that humans, the reason we evolved music essentially is to cope with, existential dread, essentially, and to connect. And I'm like, well, if I love music so much and that's what makes me feel good, why wouldn't I listen to it in the way that's going to make me feel the best?
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, I still bust Spotify and will still be like, oh man, I want to listen to this song.
Yeah.
But like if there's an album I want to put on, I will like get my music player, like if I'm in the car, and like put on that album and listen to it. But yeah, my Spotify roundup is kid songs. My Spotify roundup was like the Wiggles, but also my son likes random things, like because a friend gave me this A to Z guitar players book. Now he's like 2 years and 2 months, but he's been doing this since he was about 18 months. So I'd read him this book, and it'd be like A is for Dwayne Allman, and I can't remember.
I have that book. Yeah, I bought that for my daughter. Yeah, it's like, you got F is for Freddie Mercury, the singer of Queen, or something like that. Yeah,
something like that, right? And so like I started playing my son Maceo these, like I'd put them on YouTube, and then he'd start requesting them. So I'll be like driving him to daycare. I'm like, what do you want to listen to, mate? And he might say the Wiggles or something like that, but there's also a very good chance that he'll say like, oh, no, I want to listen to Bjork, or I want to listen to he'll say like Joni Mitchell, Yellow Taxi. And I'm like, all right. And like he likes Frank Zappa and like BB King. He's big on BB King.
How old's your kid, your son?
He's 2 years and 2 months.
Man, if my daughter turned around and was like, "Hey, can you put on some Bjork?" I think I'd shit my pants. Hey, I just would be like, "What?"
Well, my partner Natalie loves Bjork, so we'd put on "It's Oh So Quiet," and he like, sorry, that's planes flying overhead. It's living in the inner west of Sydney. It's we call it a Marrickville minute, where you just like wait a minute for the
This is
plane
good.
to fly over.
The podcast can soak up the culture of the inner West Sydney, the high real estate price, and the fucking sound of the 747s going over above.
But yeah, so like he loves like Björk because he loves It's Oh So Quiet, and he would like do the screams when she would and stuff, and like he likes Jimi Hendrix, although he still can't say Jimmy. He calls him Jimi Hendrix.
That's close enough, son.
He likes Prince, and he really likes Carlos Santana because of that book. Like, and I'd show him all of that music, and he'd be like, "Okay, I'm into that." And it's just random what he requests, but like he fucking loves Joni Mitchell. Like he will like, and it's so weird. It's so wild because he'll 100% be like all about Coco Melon as well, and all of that kid stuff. But
that's cool, man. That's good parenting right there, if you ask me. You know what I mean? Give him the choice, but also like try to sway it just enough to help yourself out.
while I still can, because I hope by the time he's a teenager, he's like got his own thing, and he has no interest in what dad's doing. Like he loves my younger brother's band, Fangs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, your brother is in Fangs, right? You produced you did their album, I think, didn't you?
No, I produced his band before that, a band called the Lockharts.
Okay, right. Yep. Okay, that's the connection.
more rock, as opposed
Mm.
to Bangs is much more like in the vein of the Bronx or something like that, you know. But he
Yeah.
loves Bangs, so like, and he'll ask to watch their film clips like over and over and over again, which is like, as much as I like that band, it's a bit fucking exhausting.
Yeah, you're like, it's my brother's
but
band. I've had enough
but
here, hey.
but I'm just happy he's into music, you know, like that's cool. And if he's not, whatever he's into, you know, I'm just gonna support that. I'm not gonna try and push him too
Mm.
much. But like I got him listening to Wu-Tang the other day because he's got a Wu-Tang shirt himself. And he's like, what does your shirt say, Maceo? And he's like, W. And I'm like, yeah, the W says Wu-Tang Clan. He's like, Wu-Tang Can. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
You're
I'm
just
like,
getting him
"All right."
prepped up for one of them, just like elitists. It's just like name 3 Wu-Tang songs, you know. There's those like people that do that, you know. If you can't wear a band shirt unless you name like certain songs. It's like fuck off, you know.
That kind of stuff is so insufferable. Like I was that guy when I was like 14,
Yeah.
but then I grew up, you know, and like there shouldn't be any elitism to music. It should just be to be enjoyed.
Nah.
And if somebody is on the path to that, cool. Like for and if they're not, no big deal. Like I mean, I bought a Grateful Dead shirt because it looked really cool, and I don't like the Grateful Dead. I just
Nah,
like the
that's it.
shirt. I don't care. Like
I
I'm old
know.
enough. Like I've got enough grey hair that I don't really give a shit about that. But
I appreciate like bands. I think that really nail it with like I love heavy metal, right? But then like I love there's like certain death metal bands that like I can't really listen to, but I really appreciate all the horrific artwork that they put out. And you're like Cannibal Corpse, you know, like there's certain times I go I like Cannibal Corpse, but for 90% of my life I can't listen to them. But every time I see like one of their fucked up album covers or shirts, you're like, I appreciate that, and I think I love the guy that goes, I'm gonna wear my Cannibal Corpse shirts out and about just to get the fucking groceries. Just like that's a lifer right there, you know. Um, yeah, that's cool, man. I'm a bit the same with you. Like I'm a product of my environment in that way. My dad is like he's a guitarist and he's like huge into music, so he sort of I guess helped me mold my tastes, you know. But then you get from there, you know, like he might be into the rock and he's not into the metal, and then you sort of springboard from there. So it'd be interesting to see how your son goes, you know, like what's the next step in like musical evolution. I think if a 2.5-year-old's asking for Jimi Hendrix and Bjork and listens to Frank Zappa and stuff, he's on the right path, I think. You know.
yeah. Well, look, as long as he vibes on whatever he vibes on. Like I'm weird in that, like, you know, for example, you know, you'll meet, you know, relatives of your in-laws, you know, like
Mm.
you meet like, and they all think you're like metal because of the long hair. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I love metal, but like my favorite discovery of the last maybe like 5 years is like a power pop band called Jellyfish that like was from the
Yeah.
early 90s that I fucking love.
Mm.
And I'll listen to that, and then I'll listen to like Sam Cooke, you know, a live Sam Cooke album, and then I'll go listen to like fucking Carole King Tapestry, which is like a bullshit good album.
Mm.
Like I'm really agnostic about what the genre is, as long if it's just good songs, I really don't care. And it's not to be pretentious or anything. It's just like this is what moves me, and I like great songs, whether that's Sad but True by Metallica, or
Mm.
you know, South of Heaven by Slayer, or like a Propagandy song, who's like probably one of my favorite bands in the world.
Mm.
Or if it's Sam Cooke, or if it's, you know, Linda Ronstadt or Paul
Yeah.
Simon or whatever, like Jackson Brown, like whatever it is, as long if the songs are good, that's all that really matters to me, you know.
Yeah, and that's it. And I think too, it's like you can't even box yourself in. Like I go, yeah, I'm a metalhead, but I listen to so much stuff. Like I've got a list of you know my 2021 albums of the year, and I don't think there's like one very traditional metal band on it. And that's not to say there weren't any good metal albums. It was just that was like the albums that really fucking hit me were ones that probably wouldn't be deemed heavy metal. You know, like the Bronx, like that album, man. Like I just couldn't stop listening to it. It was like
Yeah,
all year, you
that's a good
know.
album. why.
Oh, it's so good. And then the new Wild Hearts album was another one. But then there was bands that I discovered, like Idols. Like I really fucking like Idols. The first time I heard them, I was like, there's something I want. When there's bands that you come across and you're like, I want to listen to you. And the first one or two times you hear them, you're like, it's not sinking in, but I'm gonna stick with it. And then now I'm just like, I fully get it. I'm just like, I'm like, I bought tickets to their show in Brisbane. Fucking, it's like a year away, but I'm just so in. But then at the same time, it's like I'm like you, man. I'll go from like listening to Idols, then I'll jump into like a Nashville Pussy album, and I'm just like, I just want to hear that shit. And then you'll listen to Aerosmith, or like last 2 or 3 days, man. I've just been smashing the Beastie Boys. Like I just, like they're just. It's when something gets you, when it hooks you, it doesn't matter what genre it is. You're like, I'm in. All right, take my money.
That run of albums from Paul's Boutique up to and including Ill Communication are just faultless. They're so fucking good. Like when I was a kid, I loved License to Ill. Don't get me wrong, but like Paul's Boutique, Check Your Head, and Ill Communication, like get the fuck out. Those albums are amazing. Another band that Robbie and I both fucking stan over so hard is the Beasties. Like,
there's something about the Beastie Boys, man. I think the fact that it's kind of like, I guess, Eminem for like our era, if you can, like the fact that it was like sort of three white guys that sort of were like really invested in hip hop, like they were musicians as well too, but there was something really cool about that. And I think that's cool about the hip hop world, much like the metal and rock world, all these different sort of really people that are really into certain genres. Like it doesn't matter what color you are, what your background is, religion, all that shit. If you're good at that particular thing, then you're accepted. And I think that's really cool,
It's interesting what you say, like about like Eminem, for example, like opening the door for rap and hip hop for a lot of, people younger than us. Because they, people could see themselves in it, right? Like for me, it was always really strange because there wasn't being, like I'm born in South Africa, but I'm South African Indian because like in like the late 1800s, a whole bunch of Indians were brought over as like slave labor to South Africa. And that's how we got to South Africa. But it was weird because there was never really many people in many bands that look like me, because like in hip hop, I'm not, I wasn't black, or in punk, I wasn't white. And I never really saw myself in any music, apart from like indie music, which was, when you're a kid, you kind of like have a bit of cultural cringe around. And, which is strange now because I love so much of that stuff now. But it's weird because it was kind of a blessing and a curse, because on one hand it was a blessing because it never put limits on what I would listen to, but at the same time also there was never a clear path to that. Like I remember seeing Kim Thale in Soundgarden, right? And like I'm like, that guy's like Punjabi background for sure. I didn't know we were allowed to do this, or like seeing, other bands like that. I'm like, oh wow, we're allowed to do that shit too. That's pretty cool,
Yeah, I will just say if
like it's a bit of a thing,
Yeah, I mean, as far as doppelgangers go, I literally thought I could be talking to Mayhem or Kim Thale right now. Like you guys are fucking twin brothers.
That's because I got a beard and I'm chubby from COVID weight and not being able to train.
Man, you could do a lot worse than being Kim from Soundgarden. You know what I mean? They're the royalties are good. We like it. You're living pretty there in the inner west.
I'd be happy with his bank balance. That's for sure.
Yeah, wow. I know what you're saying then, and I was going to ask you about that actually because your brother's a musician as well, obviously. And I think creepily, Facebook, everything, I feel like you can sort of peer into people's lives and sort of know a little bit about them, You're a musician, obviously, and you just mentioned your background, South African Indian. Your brother's a musician as well. What was it like? Like I said, my dad, he's from Northern Ireland, but he was like a guitarist huge into music, and that was like how I was brought up. What was it like growing up with that background? Like you said, like growing up, you couldn't, there was like the hip hop scene, which was probably predominantly black, and then there was like the rock scene, which was probably predominantly white, and then you were sort of trying to find your feet in the world. Like, how did it come about, and what was the big,
Yeah,
you know?
not really sure, It's just like I just wanted to play guitar, like,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to play guitar in a rock band, and I've like,
Was there a band, sorry, that you sort of, as a musicians they'll go, I don't know, first time I heard Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath or Zeppelin or whatever it
it's
was.
it's so weird for me because the one that like made me want to do it, it's probably younger than that, man. It's probably like from a TV show or something, or a movie.
Yeah.
Like, I reckon it would be like Degrassi Junior High and like Zip Remedy and stuff like that, like just being young and wanting to be in a band. But I reckon also, the movie The Commitments. Have you ever seen that movie?
Yeah, dude, that's fucking so weird. It's in my top 10 of all time best movies. Being Irish, like, even though it's Southern Ireland, it's like
Right.
my whole family know it. I literally watched it probably 3 weeks ago. It
Yeah,
was,
my partner, her and I watched it recently because it's on SBS On Demand at the
yeah.
moment. And
That's exactly where I watched it too, eh? It was pretty much like why I signed up. I was like, yeah, you're on.
I was so happy that was on, because I've been looking for it online forever, because I want to show her that
Mm.
movie, because like that movie, well, firstly, that soundtrack, when I was like a little kid, we used to live next door to Angry Anderson. Um,
How good.
and like, that was in like the Bound for Glory suddenly era of Angry Anderson, and his daughter was like a year younger than me,
Hmm.
and we went to the same primary school. We lived next door to each other, and
That's so sick.
so he used to drive us to school, and my mum would pick us up, right?
So Angry Anderson was actually like a solid neighbor. Like he was just a top dude.
He was a solid neighbor. Like, we were neighbors in the old school way that neighbors used to be. Like,
Yeah.
where they would be over at each other's houses for Barbies. His partner at the time would be always over with mum, like having a cuppa and stuff like that. It was like
How
that kind
good,
of,
eh?
and
Yeah.
yeah, he was a champ to live next door to. But yeah, so he'd drive us to school, and we'd listen to that Commitment soundtrack, and
Mm.
he loved that Commitment soundtrack. But so when I watched The Commitments, I would have been in like year 5 or thereabouts, and there's a scene in that where it's Owlspan, the guitar player, and I can't think of the Derek. Is it Derek Scully, the
Derek,
character's name, is
yeah,
the bass
yeah, the
player?
bass player, yeah, Derek, yeah,
Yeah, and he's and they're talking to Jimmy Rabbit, and they're like, they wanted to quit the band after the first gig or something like that.
yeah.
And I'm not gonna do the accent,
I
but
already know where you're headed with this, but keep going with it.
you know, Jimmy goes to them. Well, why do you want to do this?
Yeah,
Is it the money? They go, it'd be nice if there was some money.
yeah,
And it's like, is it the girls? And he's like, well, there's none of them. And it's like, what is it? And it's like, and they're like, and they're sort of lost for words. And Jimmy gets up in their face and goes, it's because you want to stand up, like, in a world full of tossers, like, you want to stand up and basically go, like, show that you're not a tosser.
yeah.
Like, you want to say, I'll
And he
spend
says
Wally,
their
and
name.
I'm
He says their names.
Jimmy
Yeah.
fucking Scully, and I'm not a fucking tosser.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, there was just something in that. Like, when I watch that scene, like, even now, like, there's something about that just makes me like choke up.
It's
And
it's such a great movie. There's so many like messages in it. I feel like that, like subtly just there. But
yeah,
yeah, that's
and
great,
that,
man.
I think, like that movie, The Blues Brothers,
Yeah,
are the
nice.
two things that like made me want to be in a band. And then getting into punk rock, when punk rock exploded in the early 90s,
Mm.
like, was like that was the desire, was those movies, and also
Mm.
just loving like Dad's Deep Purple records. And Dad
Mm.
would play all sorts of music when we were kids, though. Like, he would put on classical music. Sorry, plane overhead again. Dad would put on like classical music or jazz music, and in our like lounge room on our stereo, and he would turn it up and like turn off the lights and be like, just listen to it and just like feel what that music does to you, and like listen to one instrument and then listen to another one and just pick it out and follow it through the whole music, you know. And he was really into it. My whole family loves music. My mom loves music. My, you know, like they were, but not, you know, didn't really play any instruments because there wasn't really money or opportunity to when they were kids, you know. So that was a very musical household. But anyway, so all of that stuff was the desire, and then punk rock was like the pathway.
Yeah.
In terms of like getting into punk rock, it's like, okay, this is how we do it.
Yeah.
How we can do it.
What were some of the bands back then that like sort of you were interested? You mentioned Propaganda. Like, what were some of the bands that you fucking sold you?
I still love Propaganda. I still listen to Propaganda weekly.
I'm gonna have to say this to you, man, because I feel like I'm lying to you. I have genuinely never listened to that band, hey, and I'm gonna have to now after this podcast.
Yeah,
I've never listened to it. Where do I start? What's the album to start, you reckon?
Look, I think start at the beginning. Start at How to Clean Everything, which is like came out like 94. And then go from there. But like the first like punk CD I bought that wasn't a compilation was their second album, Less Talk, More Rock. And the first song, you know, track 1, side 1 of How to Clean Everything is a song called Anti-Manifesto. And there's this line in it. It's like, we strive for something more than to be a faded sticker on a skateboard. And they were always just more like, they're super political and like really upfront about their political beliefs and so on. And they just grabbed me from the beginning. But in terms of that early 90s stuff, I mean, I was a huge Nirvana fan before punk broke. Like I was massively into Nirvana. I still love Nirvana. But yeah, so Propaganda, How to Clean Everything, and Let's Talk More Rock. Green Day Dookie is fucking amazing. And that, I still love that album. So like Green Day, but like a lot of the fat bands, you know, like NoFX was big, Rancid. I'm naming bands on Epitaph, but
that's so weird you mentioned that, bro. I actually watched I had a few drinks last night, and at like 11 o'clock I chucked on Punk in Drublic. Have you seen that yet? With the NoFX tour that they did with like Bad Religion. It's on YouTube, man. I don't even know if it's like an authorized one, but it was actually really fucking good, because I've never been massively into NoFX, and that's not to say I don't like them. I just never sort of paid too much attention. And they just released that song "Fuck Euphemism," and it came up on my Spotify, and I'm like, oh, the lyrics were just fucking genius. Hey, I was like, I love it. And there's something about that band that you're just like, I want to listen to them more, like, because they're just being just authentically themselves. Like,
well, it's funny you mentioned, because Punk in Drublic was like a massive album for me in that era as well. The Descendants, Good Riddance, even stuff like Satanic Surfers, 88 Fingers Louie, and then getting into other stuff from there. But yeah, like, I mean, all of those Fat and Epitaph comps were just so instrumental in all of that early 90s. Like Face to Face, Don't Turn Away is great. Actually, speaking of Propaganda though, there is a song that they wrote many years later called Rock for Sustainable Capitalism. And they're basically they take a pot shot at Lars Fredriksson and Fat Mike from NoFX.
Oh, really?
It's amazing. It's so good. It's like, that's why I love Propaganda, because they're literally signed to the label and they're giving Fat Mike shit for his punk voter thing. It's just amazing. But Propaganda, like, still, they're just like so fucking smart. Sorry, that was my phone.
That's right. They're just one of those bands that just say like what's on their mind, regardless of like what feelings it might hurt. It's like, and they just believe in it.
And even on their later stuff, like I would say start at the beginning and go all the way through, and you can see the evolution, because now they're so much more technical and so much more metallic in their sound. But their last album, Victory Lap, it's interesting because, you know, they're parents themselves now.
Yeah.
And there's this song called Failed Imagineer, and he talks about his two grandfathers, right? And like, you know, about how broken those guys were from the stuff that they had to do as young people, as like the first lines is sit down with me, let's have a drink. And he's talking to obviously his child, right? Like, or his, you know, offspring, who's like obviously now grown older. And then so you're, you know, and it's like telling a story about his, you know, his grandparents, like his grandfather, his two grandfathers who were both in war, and, you know, what happened to them, and what they became. And then at the end of that verse, he says, oh, and this is the world I brought you into, man. And it's like, you know, it hits me really heavy, because it's like, this is the world I brought you into as your father. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is the world that I brought you into, but here we are, you know. And it's called Failed Imagineer, and it's about him. Like, he says, like, you know, the later lines go like, what have we here? The dreaded failed Imagineer, whose private dismay is on public display, because those are the song lyrics that he wrote. You know. And it's like, it's just really like, that's a band that I've grown up with and grown with, and they continue to grow as well. Like, there's a song called Adventures in Psychosis that I highly recommend you listen to, and like, take a tissue box when you read those lyrics, because so anyway, that's just a massive tangent, but
no, that's the show, man. I'll definitely check that out, man. And I love the whole pay it forward mentality. I always say this on the show, like, pay it forward, you know, some way, shape or form. Like, this band have been around for a long time. I've never heard them. I've heard of them, just never heard them. And I feel like if you like them, it's like, fuck, I've just discovered another 20 fucking albums or something like that potentially. So that's good.
It's good to listen to with a lyric sheet in hand, and then you might need, and then maybe Google as well, because like some of their references are very obscure, but like when you read them, it's like, oh wow, that's fucking mind blowing.
Yeah, I love that sort of stuff too. Like with bands, like, again, like going back to like liking so much different stuff. Like, I always find the Wild Hearts, like the way Ginger writes, like, you can generally know what he's talking about. You're like, you feel like he's telling you a story, and you're like, I'm right in it here, right? You know. But then there'll be certain things like you're saying, you're like, what does he mean? Is he talking about this politician, or is he talking about that particular thing? And you go on a bit of a deep dive, looking on his Twitter and shit. But there's some bands like that just get you, and then when they get you, they've got you. You know, you just like, you've got them forever. And we're at that age now, and it's cool too, given that you are like a parent now, and myself, like, shit hits you differently than, like, it's amazing, like certain movies that I'll watch now, and I'm like, fuck, I didn't cry like that 3 years ago or 5 years ago. Why is it now affecting me? Something got me the other night, man, and I can't even think of what it was. I was watching it literally with Arabella, that's my daughter's name, and I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? I was just like, I'm turning to water here, you know? And it was like that moment of like a dad and a kid in this thing. It'll come to me eventually, but Jesus Christ, it got me, eh? And I was just like, I wouldn't have done that 5 years ago. That wouldn't even fucking resonated.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody needs to have a good cry every now and again.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree, man. That's one thing. I think I've mentioned on the show a couple of times, but that for such a long time, that was such a hard thing to grasp, like the act of crying. But I feel in years to come, it'll be like a really out there public part of therapy that people can like cry therapy. It's almost like whenever I've cried, sometimes you're just like, oh, I feel like the anxieties on my head, my brain fog's gone. Like everything's just like, you're like a new person that's just gone through the fucking, you know, dishwasher or something.
Well, that's funny, right? It's because, like, you know, there's, you know, that term like toxic masculinity, and like I do martial arts, I boxed, I like fighting, you know,
Yeah.
as that's my favorite form of exercise, is to try and get on the mat and try and choke someone, and they try and choke me, and then smile at each other at the end and high five and go, oh, you really got me there.
Yeah.
But it's not that stuff is toxic. What's toxic is that we feel the need to suppress our emotions and our sensitivity.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I spent several years in therapy, you know, until my therapist told me I didn't need to come anymore, which was cool. I graduated.
Yeah. Congratulations. You're free. Yeah.
No, she was like, you know, I just don't think you need it anymore. And I'm like, I don't think so either. And
Yeah.
that was it. But
That's
you know,
a nice
like
moment.
I'm a firm believer in therapy. I'm a firm believer in all of that stuff. And I think what is toxic is, like, when I was young, when I was like 18, you know, I used to be very proud of having not cried since year 4. You know, at my Auntie Betty's funeral. I was so proud of that. And that's fucked, because like, you know, these are like, what a cut off existence, to cut off your emotions and have them manifest in all these terrible other ways of like aggression and all that kind of stuff. So it's not like, you know, and it's like this kind of ideal is just as damaging, or not just as damaging, but it damages men as much as it damages wider society, because like that's not a healthy way to live. And it's healthy to have emotions and to be unafraid of emotions. Like, what is stronger, pretending like you've never cried, or freely admitting without any fear that, yeah, oh man, I cried the other day, you know, or I saw this and it touched me inside, and it resonated with something and I got all choked up. That's strength to me. Strength is not just like cutting that stuff off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that. To me, that's almost like the definition of like wearing your heart on your sleeve. Like, just really like you're authentically like being yourself in every emotion, every possible feeling. And I'm the same as you. Like, you, for so long, you suppress certain feelings, and then it, you know, like you said, it manifests in other ways. So you might, by not letting out a tear here, you might fucking punch a wall there, you know. So it's like it, and that was always my thing. You'd end up raging somewhere, you know, and then it doesn't help that, like, we, you know, growing boys into men, you know, that's the thing, you're always learning. And I hate that expression, toxic masculinity. Like, I know it's a thing and I know it's out there, because I think that the word masculinity, it's almost damaged by adding the word toxic to it, because being masculine, there's nothing wrong with being masculine. Like you just said there, right? You're a man that likes to, you're doing BJJ, you're doing boxing. Like, that's a normal thing to go, I want to push myself out there and test myself. And it's a fucking healthy way to go, look, I've got some aggression here, I've got some fucking emotions. Like, there's things that you need to get out in a, like, an animalistic way, I think. And I think you're getting them out in the best way possibly too. You could be one fucking idiot that goes and just, you know, king hits someone in the back of the head after, like, you know, 15 vodka sunrises in the valley or something like that. But that's not helping anybody, is it? You know, choking someone out where it's like a mutually agreeable place. That's why I think BJJ is so interesting. Like, that is such an interesting thing.
But, you know, the thing is I think for me about that though, is that desire or that need shouldn't be restricted to just men. You know, like, I know so many girls who would kick the shit out of both of us.
Fuck yeah, dude.
You know, on the mat. So like, I think like, you know, that is masculine, and you know, other ways is not. I think it's all just part of whoever you are on it as an individual. You know what I mean? And I think what, like, I get what you're saying about the term, but I think what is toxic is the idea that we shouldn't be able to have emotion. You know, not that necessarily like you being male equals some form of toxicity, but but a society that expects you not to cry is a toxic society. You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah, it's a loaded term, and I totally get
Yeah.
why people hate that term.
Yeah. It's out there. Yeah. It's one of those things, isn't it? It's interesting too. Like it's this day and age it's such an interesting time in the world. I mean, especially with the last 2.5 years with COVID, there's been I talk about in the last episode, man, like the overconsumption of information out there now, the over people's opinions are just like through the roof. And the fact that people can't respect other people's opinions too in this day and age, like it's just totally changing. I had to laugh this week, man. You've probably seen it if you're on the fucking internet. Everyone's seen it. But did you see Neil Young like threatening to take his music off Spotify unless Spotify canceled Joe Rogan? And it's just like, fuck, you know what I mean? Like Neil Young of all people has just come out and said that, and I just like, I like Joe Rogan, but I like Neil Young too. And that's the thing. You just go, okay, there's differing opinions here, but it's crazy. I think just this whole thing, and I've seen so many people I follow on just Instagram or fucking Facebook, and it's both sides. You're like, I never thought you'd side with Neil, and I never thought you'd completely side with Joe. Like you're just going, wow, this is interesting, you know?
I think what the bigger problem is, like, not saying that's not fucked, is the feeling that you need to take a side.
Yeah,
right? Like, why do you need to take a side in that? It's like,
I know.
and that's the thing that I think is kind of worrying. Is like, why do you need to, like, why do we all have to have a take on something?
Yeah,
You know, like some of my really good mates, like, you know, one of my best friends is like what I would consider a genius.
yeah,
Like he's the way his mind works is mind-boggling in his level of intelligence. And like, I went to a selective school, so there's a lot of smart kids there and stuff. I probably wasn't one of them, but but I somehow got in. And like a lot of, you know, it's really common amongst those people that I know who are really intelligent is they're never afraid of saying, I don't know.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
like
Which is a
you
great
ask them,
trait to have, I think. Like you have to have it.
it's just flat out, I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't have a position on this because I have not thought about this enough to have a position on this. Like, I mean, you know,
that's just that thing that you said there, and I know you're a pretty political person. Well, compared to me, I'd definitely say you're into politics, you know, and truly, man, like there'll be certain things that you post that I'm like, I didn't even know about that, or I've never heard of it like that, or something that's just kind of made me go. And I'm a pretty open dude in that way, you know what I mean? Like I have an opinion on things, but I'm not like my opinion's the best, yours is wrong. So when sometimes I see your posts and I'm like, yeah, I never thought about it like that, or I fucking didn't even know that was a fucking thing. You're just like, okay, there's refugees where? I'm sorry, what? Like, you know, and because I've just always been sort of anti news and things like that because I find it depresses me. But yeah, you're my news.
you have to take breaks with that stuff. I mean, for me, coming where I come from, in terms of like born in, you know, born in the non-white section of the hospital because I was born in an apartheid country, and that my father was heavily involved in, you know, he was a freedom fighter essentially. He was in the ANC. He was fighting against apartheid, and you know, a lot of his friends got locked up and tortured. And because my racial classification, which you know, basically said what rights I was allowed and what rights I'm not allowed. Being political over there is just the norm because your existence was political. Like by the definition of what your racial classification was, your existence from that moment on is political, right? And so, and also, you know, coming from a family that's like coming from a Muslim background as well, you know, being very into like geopolitics and what's going on. Like so much of that, like even now you can't, like your existence is political, so you can't escape it. But by the same token, I also like there's heaps of times I don't read the news and heaps of times I don't have an opinion about something because one, I'm not
Yeah.
reading the news because I've got to like, you know, look after myself first. Before, you know, it's like the mask in the airplane, you know, like
Yeah, dude.
fix the mask to yourself first before you can go and help someone, you know.
I literally
And
say that to my partner all the time, almost as a bit of a piss take now. But I'm like, Beck, like, I've got to help myself, right? You know, fix your own mask and then sort me out, and vice versa.
I mean, I
You
was
got
watching
it, man.
Queer Eye the other night, which is like a joyful show to watch, and and you know, they were talking about that, and it's like, yeah, that's what they tell you in therapy as well. It's like you have to be able to look after yourself so that you can, you know, you can help other people. But in
Yeah.
terms of like weighing into something, like when if I was to post something that was political, it's something that I have thought about and examined,
Yeah.
but I'm not on, like, say for example, I don't really use Twitter. I just follow Jack Slack for his tweets, which is like an MMA analyst, and he's got a podcast. And if you're into MMA, you should listen to Jack Slack's podcast because he's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
But
I'll
he's
check
an
him
English
out. I've
guy.
never heard of him actually. Yeah.
Dude, Jack Slack's awesome. He's written some of the best, and his YouTube videos coming up to fights, he'll do breakdowns, are the best, like in terms of technical knowledge from someone who trains. But he's also English, and he's happy to call bullshit on Dana White or whoever else because he's not in the
He's
UFC
not.
or
He's not
anything.
in the circle. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, oh, dude, Jack Slack's podcasts are great. Get onto it. And his Twitter is basically just jokes. But I'm not on Twitter like retweeting and commenting on everything to have an opinion, because I think that's like, it's cool that people do have opinions and it's cool that people can give their opinion, but I also don't believe that you have to have an opinion on everything. And I think
No,
that
I agree. Yeah.
that's where like social media has like given us the idea that we should have a take on everything.
Yeah.
And it's okay to not know, like to say I don't know, or ask a question, what is this about, is more of a sign to me of, like, say when I think of intelligent people I know who I think are just super intelligent, they all have this ability to go, I don't know, tell me more, explain it to me.
Yeah.
What is it that you're talking about, and not having a take on something. Whereas, like, say for example, Joe Rogan and Neil Young, like someone actually asked me, what do you think about that? And I'm like, I don't. I don't think about that. You
Yeah.
know, like I haven't listened to, like, I mean, I used to listen to the Joe Rogan podcast a lot. Like I listened to it back in like 2010, you know? Like
Yeah. He's been. I think people don't realize how long he's been around for. Like he's just been going for so long. You know.
well, I mean, I first used to watch him on news radio, but like I never liked his stand-up. I think his stand-up shit.
I
And
agree. I like everything else he does except his fucking comedy. Like just stick to
I,
MMA and podcasting.
and like, I mean, I haven't listened to the Rogan podcast in years because unless it's like a really interesting guest, and even when it is, it's just shoehorning the same talking points into something. It's like, I don't need to listen to that. I might not agree or disagree or agree either way, but I'm just bored of that, you know?
Yeah.
So like the opinion is like, what do you think about Neil Young versus Joe Rogan? And I'm like, well, I don't know. If it's a singing contest, Neil wins. If it's
Yeah.
a Taekwondo match, Joe wins. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't care. Like
Yeah.
whatever. Like it's
It's
just,
interesting, hey, and I know what you're saying. It's almost like you could have an opinion on it very easily, but you're like you've got so much going on as well that you need to take care of, and almost like almost like verges on your own mental health. That you're like, I'm not even gonna fucking attach myself to that, because it's those sort of things are out of your control as well. I think, you know, and I agree with you. Like most of the successful people that I know, generally speaking, like they're probably sometimes the quietest in the room, and they're like that. They're just so focused on whatever they're doing, and which is why they're fucking driving Ferraris and have mansions and shit.
or
You
they're
know?
just listening.
Yeah.
Or they're just listening, and they're listening to what's happening around them instead of trying to show how clever they are and
Yeah.
revealing that they're not by speaking. You know what I mean? Like they're listening. And also it's just, yeah, that's the thing that I think is really weird, is like if I have a take on something or have thought about something, have an opinion about something, it's something I've thought of and like
Yeah.
spend some time thinking about. It's not just reacting to whatever's in my feed. You know what I mean? I just like, nah, I'm not dealing with this now. I'm gonna read some trashy bullshit. I used to only read nonfiction, and I've read like very intense geopolitics stuff and all of that kind of stuff.
Mm.
The last 2 years, I've just been reading fucking trash, like Who Done It, fucking
Yeah.
novels. And I started that doing night feeds with my son when he was a newborn.
Yeah.
Was
Right.
like I was like, I'm up. I don't want to listen to a podcast because I want to listen to what's going on with him. I'm feeding him, and he had like reflux, so he was up a lot and everything. So I just like download books onto the Kindle app on my phone.
Oh
But
yeah.
just like trashy shit you'd read on an airplane, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like so I just like fucking spy novels and shit, whatever. So like I've read plenty of highfalutin stuff to be able to read all of this shit. And it's just like, I'd just rather not have an opinion and just go back to what's Detective Bosch doing today. Like,
Yeah.
like whatever it is. But, I think that whole thing of like feeling like you have to have a take on absolutely everything is not a good thing. And I think that there's like, it makes you kind of almost like a dilettante in that you're like, have these little pieces of experience. But what I love is mastery. I like, or a deeper understanding of something, you know what I mean? So like, if I'm talking about it, it's because it's something that's been on my mind a lot and I've been thinking about it. It's not like reacting to something I saw a junkie shared or whatever, clickbaity site is trying to get you to engage with, because it's not something I've had enough time to think about or put a thought to, or is worth putting a thought to.
Yeah, that's another thing too, and that's good. I think that like is a great way to be, because I've often gone, you'll start typing a Facebook comment into something and you're like, you feel very strongly about it, probably because you fucking got a bit of emotion on the issue at hand, and then I'll go, no, I'm not going to hit enter there, and you go back, and 9 times out of 10, you'll a day or two or three goes by, and you'll see the other side of that thought that you had, and then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, actually, maybe I wasn't totally right in what I was about to type or post or whatever it is. So that's that's incredibly smart.
Don't send emails when you're angry. Like, draft the email and walk away, read it in an hour. Let me know if you still feel the same way, then send it. You know what I mean? Because, emotion plays into it a lot. And like, I've been in enough flame wars when I was like in my early 20s to last me a lifetime. I don't like, and some of my friends might laugh because I do get argumentative, but only on things I really care about.
Yeah.
Like, for example, that I saw that Rogan Neil Young thing, and so many people I know were getting like mad invested in that, and it's like, why?
Yeah. It's one of those things too, like when you really step back from that, you're going, I don't think his music's going to go off Spotify, and I also don't think Joe Rogan's going to get canned. Like, it's almost like it could happen, but I doubt it. And then it's going to be some other news in a month.
You're not paying $100 million to can that, and
fuck no.
And I've like, it's weird because after that person asked me what I thought, I was like, oh, what is this? And I read it, and it's like that thing that Neil Young did. It was taken off his website so fucking quickly, probably because his managers called up and went, nah, you're not doing that, or whatever it is. It's just,
whoa, Neil, think about this, man.
It's like, I think there's so many bigger things to tackle than that. It's like, sometimes I think that's like a distraction from something bigger, and it's like, oh no, there's plenty of things you can be engaged on that are really fucked, and that maybe you should put some action to. And not saying that posting is a good form of catharsis for sure, but like, there's so many bigger things to worry about than someone's hot take.
Well, that's it. Yeah, like, and I think that to me is like the funniest thing about this day and age. It's like the whole cancel culture thing, where it's like, if you don't like someone's take on X, or you don't like what they said about X and Y, you like shut them off, close them off. I was watching, and I know you're a fan of his. I was watching some Bill Hicks yesterday, and I mean, him and George Carlin, like that shit just stands the test of time, and it's almost like you need those modern day people now to like call it, like how it is for certain things. But then you're going, would they even be able to just fucking carry on the way that they once did? Like in a sense they could, but um, it was mental. You know what? Actually, yeah. I was thinking about it recently. I was going to talk about it next week, but it was the Dave Chappelle comedy special that really divided people too. And then I was watching Jimmy Carr, his new comedy special on Netflix the other night. I don't know if you've seen either of them. Have you seen the comedy
I saw
specials?
the Chappelle one, yeah.
Yeah. Man, that one just fully divided people. And I was just like it didn't really do that for me. I just thought, oh, this is funny. I get it. I tell you what bothers me more about Dave Chappelle than anything to do with anything he says about transsexuals or fucking anything is how much he uses the word bitch to talk about women. I really don't like that when people refer to women as bitches all the time. And that bothers me a whole lot more than him talking about anything else. But that's just my take on that. But
I mean, like I used to love Chappelle, and I think like a few specials ago, what was it? Equimanity and the Bird Revelation.
yeah,
Like the Bird Revelation was fucking incredible. And that was the one where he's just sitting down in the belly room at the Comedy Store. And that's like an incredible special. But I watched that latest one. And for me, I'm just like, and this is someone who's been a Chappelle fan for years. I was just like I just didn't laugh that much. And I'm
yeah,
like, well, the comedian, so you should make me laugh. And second to that, it was just like, I just sound like a rich old dude complaining about shit. Like, this is boring. I'm sure I've got a better take somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
yeah,
like, all right, Dave. Like, fuck, you're not that hard done by. Like,
yeah.
you're a millionaire. Shut up. Like,
I know.
but I just don't. But also, the weird thing with that, right, is like the reaction to that special, right? All these people, like plenty of trans people had a lot of issue with that.
Yeah,
And I could kind of see their point in terms of like, you kind of used that person who died as like your one black friend. That people always say, well, my black friend so and so doesn't mind if I call him the N-word, so it's okay. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't quite work like that. But
yeah,
what I thought was weird was that, people thinking that Chappelle was cancelled. And it's like, firstly, like people are criticizing him, which is like part of, this is the back and forth of what social media exists in now.
yeah,
But I don't know how someone who has like the most downloaded special on Netflix, who has a thriving career, who plays to like packed houses everywhere, what's cancelled?
yeah,
There's nothing
exactly.
cancelled. You're not cancelling this multi-millionaire who still
Yeah,
exists. Like, I think also like it's got to be like, I think people like get mad at criticism calling it being cancelled. It's like, but if for example, like, Rogan rallying against cancel culture, it's like, you're not cancelled. You're the most downloaded man in the world. You're the most listened to podcast in the entire world, who got $100 million from Spotify. There's no canceling. Canceling doesn't exist here. Like,
yeah.
you still exist. People criticize it, and people say like, maybe you shouldn't listen to that. But that's like, I don't know. I don't. People should listen to whatever they want. But I always find
Yeah.
it weird when we call it when Chappelle's being cancelled. From what? He exists.
Yeah, and I think that too is how like the media yeah, from the outside looking in, I mean, we know like he's not getting cancelled, and I'm sure he's not worried about getting cancelled. It's funny, there's like this whole, it's an interesting term, the whole cancel culture thing. It's definitely only like, I don't even think it's like 5 years old really. It's like it's sort of it's very new, but Yeah, it's crazy. I was just thinking about it the other night watching that, and I agree with you. Like, I thought it was funny in parts, I did, but then there was other parts where I'm like, I appreciate him as a storyteller as well. I think some comedy is like pure shock. Like, say Jimmy Carr, he's not a storyteller. He's just like does these sort of funny jokes, and like they're some of them are just so vulgar that you're like, I do a lot of that laughing that you go, "Hoo-hoo," like,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you know
that's
it's funny,
fine.
you know, and I think that's my weekly shows, man. I try to be humorous where I can and take take a fucking take the shit out of things because you think, oh, if it's I almost because I don't take myself seriously. That's the thing as well. Like I go, look, I don't take myself seriously and I make fun of myself and I welcome when people make fun of me because I'm in turn going to probably make fun of you, and that's
Mhm.
kind of the banter that we got. But yeah, man, it was crazy. I can't remember how we got onto that point. Sorry, but
No. But
yeah.
yeah. I mean, there was one joke in there. I can't remember what it was, but like, I laughed out loud hard. But the rest, I was like, whatever. But if you like his storytelling stuff, like I think it's called The Bird Revelation, was really good.
Yeah, I'll be honest, man. I've actually not seen any of his other specials. I sort of I'm hit and miss with some of the comedy specials, or I'll miss them, and then this new one got like it got. I think it probably got a lot more press because of the whole backlash, as opposed to like it's so funny you should watch this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but it's the same as like like Bill Hicks, like watching his stuff too. Very funny, but almost great storyteller. There's messages amongst
Mhm.
the jokes, you know. Um,
Sure. For sure. And
I
I love Bill Hicks, but I can also freely admit, like, this is the thing as well, is where, like, with this social media stuff and like everybody having to have a take on it, the media like inflaming things because that gets clicks, and frankly, people don't, it's a dwindling landscape in
mm,
as far as news goes, right? But like, there's also this like paralysis of perfection where people like don't do anything because you've got to be perfect or
yeah,
accept that it's perfect, and that's weird to me because, like, for example, Bill Hicks, I love Bill Hicks. I
mm,
like, how many hours we spent in the tour van listening to Bill Hicks, in the
yeah,
Hell City days, and like, because I got all those guys into Bill Hicks, and but I can also freely admit that he was probably a bit of a misogynist,
yeah,
like, I'm
yeah. At a
okay with
different
that
time
because,
too, you're almost like, yeah, okay. You're like, yeah,
yeah,
maybe wait,
because like,
granddad was a racist. you
because
know?
yeah, yeah, because the thing is that if we accept that we're always trying to get better and we're not the person who we were yesterday, we were all terrible at some point in various
Yeah,
points. Like, for
100%. Yeah,
example, like, when I was a teenager, I used her language like that was so homophobic that I would never use in a million years now.
mm,
But what
mm,
happened is we learnt from that, and then we got better, and then we stopped doing that. And it's like, okay, but that doesn't mean that I want to pretend that I was perfect back then, because that is not true.
mm,
Like, for
mm,
example, and if you view that as like, I'm a well-intentioned person who's just trying to do better, it doesn't mean that your response is terrible. Like, I always think about, one of my best friends is like, he's just the best, but he's also like super intelligent guy, blue-eyed white boy,
yeah,
and he pointed out to me once, many years ago, that I was being racist. I can't remember what the context was,
mm,
but he said, no, Mo, that's actually racist. The more logical reason for this behavior that you're ascribing is because of these other reasons, which make way more sense than the stereotype that you just gave them. And I was like, oh yeah, I was
yeah,
being racist. You're right, James. And then we moved on with our day and got a fucking coffee.
yeah,
Because like, that doesn't mean that I'm an evil person.
mm, mm,
It means that that was something that I was wrong about.
yeah,
And then someone showed me, hey, this is actually a way more logical thing here. So I was like, okay, that makes so much more sense. I was
yeah,
being that. And that
mm,
doesn't
mm,
mean that I am bad. It just means I'm learning. So the
mm,
problem with like like people expecting everything to be perfect. It's so binary. It's black or white, you know,
True. Yeah.
right or wrong. And that is not the world that we exist in. Like we're just all just getting, like, you know, if you're a decent person, you're just trying to get better,
Mm,
you know, and trying to be better and trying to act in ways that are better. So sure, you might have done something or said something or whatever, but it also means that you can view things with context. Because, like, say for example, I love Bill Hicks and I'll listen to Bill Hicks. Recently I'm like, oh, that joke about that woman, that's a bit off.
yeah.
But it doesn't mean that I don't love him. It just means that he's a victim of his time and circumstance, and
Yeah.
that his heart was in the right place, and that, you know, who knows where he'd be now, or who knows where we'd be now, you know, like it's just different. Like, I mean, I love Eddie Murphy movies. You know, like Coming to America, the OG one is like one of my favorite movies of
Yeah,
all
it's
time.
a classic. Yeah.
But if you watch the first 5 minutes of Delirious, that shit's fucked.
Yeah.
You know, at the time,
yeah,
I
his
thought
stuff was pretty harsh too, you know, like it was
yeah.
they're all classic, those comedians, and they said some fucking out there stuff.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, we have better, you know, we have better ways of talking now, and we understand people's situation more. So, but that doesn't mean that you can't enjoy what is still good.
Yeah.
It just means if you can view it with context. But there's almost like this idea that it's all one way or all the other way, as opposed to you know, like it's like, you know, you see it sometimes with this. I remember I was out with this other Indian mate of mine, and I was talking to him, and I said a racial epithet about us. I was like, oh, you know what us curry munchers are like, blah blah blah. And this white dude came up to me and was like, you can't say that. I'm like, I'm pretty fucking sure I can. And I'm pretty sure you can't tell me what to say or not. He's like, no, you can't say it. And it's like this, almost like this policing of being perfect, and nobody's perfect. And it's almost like there's this massive desire to show other people that your past never existed, that you were so wrong about in so many ways.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, no, that's not, we just try and do better next time and try and get better.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to look at it too. I mean, that's like learning from your mistakes 101, isn't it? Like, you know, things I did with girlfriends or friends when you're out on the piss, or your opinions on things 10 years ago are definitely different to how you would be today. And again, if you probably didn't do that shit 10 years ago, you probably wouldn't realize it. Hey, fuck, like that was actually pretty wrong how I did that, and I didn't handle that situation that great, whatever it may be. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's this thing of like attaching your ego to ideas that you have is a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know, because if you attach your ego and your sense of self to ideas, then instead of debating the idea or the concept, what you then do is that's when people fight over that stuff, is because if your ideas are attached to your sense of self, then when someone attacks that idea, instead of being able to debate the idea, they're attacking you.
Yeah.
And then you have to defend it, as opposed to let it go. It's just an idea, you know, it's just a thought. And if you're proven wrong, you're wrong. And now you've been shown something better. So like, get rid of it. But attaching your ego and your sense of self to ideas and thoughts you have is where it gets dangerous, I think. And that's like where extremism comes in, you know?
Yeah, and that's it. And people,
so weird for we're going to talk about like my wild band days, and now we've just gone on to this like,
nah, this is exactly how the podcast always goes, man. I'm looking at, like, I had like some show notes, and it kind of was like music, how we met, music, and then I was like politics. And I just like, yeah, I was like, maybe we'll touch on that. I don't know much about politics. I know he feels passionate about it, but no, we'll definitely have to do some more, man. I reckon mate, you could be a regular. That sounds sick. We could do some music breakdowns. So, no, this is cool, man. We could probably wrap it up. We're going for like an hour and a half. We'll wrap it up very shortly. But yeah, I appreciate what you're saying though. I mean, yeah, and it's good too. You sound like a very self-aware person. That's kind of like you know what you're good at, you know what you're learning, and I think this is again not saying that every human being has to be like that, but it's a good position to hold. I think like you're aware, but you don't know everything, and that's kind of like what most human beings are like. They're just maybe not there just yet, So, um,
Like, I mean, one of the things I love about this mate of mine, James, that I was talking about, right, is he argues fiercely until he's proven wrong. And then he apologizes quickly when he
yeah,
is.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It's like, yes, he will back his position. He will try and give you a rational argument as to why. But if you present a better argument to him that makes more rational sense, he'll just be like jumping on that train
yeah.
because cool,
and 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 yeah, and I think that's good. That can be fucking difficult for some people, man. When you've been so passionate about whatever it was you're arguing about for just that night or so long. I always think about it. There's a series on YouTube called like Soft White. I think it's called Soft White Underbelly. I have to find it, but it's a guy that just does interviews with all these different people from like junkies, pimps, prostitutes, neo Nazis, all gang members, all sorts of shit. And 90% of the time it'll be like people that have like seen this side of their extremism and then maybe come out on the other side of their extremism. And I always think it's like people that were once like keen racists and then going, oh yeah, actually that was wrong, and now I have like black friends, or vice versa. You could be an extreme, on your religion or whatever it may be. There's a great documentary. There's Digress. There's a fucking documentary about this. He's this black guy. I can't think of his name. He's a big guy and he's a musician. I think he's a
I know the one. I know the
yeah,
one who collects.
and he reforms KKK members.
I've seen
Fuck,
that.
fascinating, man. Like that was just fascinating, dude. I think he's actually been on Rogan. That guy.
That documentary, that documentary was incredible. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, like
Nah, it'll come to me after the show. But
he was an incredibly patient man. But I also enjoyed in that, like, because I loved his story and I loved what he's doing and treating people with humanity.
mm,
That's like so important. But you know what I also understood watching that documentary was like, there was like some younger black guys who were criticizing him.
mm,
Like, well, why is it our job to be a teacher and healer? And I
mm,
also got their point of view. And I
yeah,
like that documentary in that they're like, yeah, sometimes like marginalized people don't have to be the teachers for
yeah,
people who aren't marginalized.
mm,
But I also loved his approach of what like but I also like loved him so much and I thought that was so cool because it's like complex and it's
yeah,
a lot of gray there, but what I loved was his approach of treating someone who denies his own humanity with humanity, right? And that was like
yeah.
that's beautiful and that's something we can all I think learn from, right?
100%, man. That was an amazing documentary. Like the fact that, and it was very cool too. When you look at it like on that very surface level, it was like this guy's so good at whatever he's doing in life that he can like reform people that hate the color of his skin. And then they like, from all accounts, he became really good friends with some of these people that were like the fucking Grand Dragon of the Wisconsin,
Yeah,
chapter of the KKK or whatever it was. And you're just like, wow. But that was, yeah. I'll find that, man. I will have to put it in the show notes. It'll come to me after. I'll Google it.
I can't think of
But
the
yeah,
name either, but
nah.
like
But he's a musician too, which was fucking fascinating as well. So there's that. Like, he just loves music. You're like,
well,
wow.
that's the thing is I think like some of these things like so again like we didn't get to talk about any of the drugs, any of the tour stories, any
Mate,
of
we
the
might maybe this could be a King of the Couch episode, even though it's got incredibly deep here. And then I reckon we fucking circle back for That Sounds Sick, and we're Motley Crue the dirt.
yeah.
Yeah, dude.
I can tell you about the time I walked off stage 3 songs into the set thinking our set was over.
Fuck,
Um,
man.
yeah,
I
but
remember you
no,
did
what I
some
was
shit.
saying with that like racism stuff and all that kind of thing is like I have a lot of empathy for the people who would actually probably hate me. And I think the thing is as well, is that if I believe that there's systems in place or have been in place that promote racism and sexism and homophobia. I mean, you know, we had the White Australia policy here. We had, you know, women didn't have the right to vote for a very long time. Women are still not believed in so many issues. Homophobia was just part of the course. I believe these things are systemic. I think, you know, like, you know, we only had marriage equality very recently. But so if we agree that there's systemic issues, then it's really fucking unreasonable to expect that these things don't manifest systematically, and that people who then project these things, that they're incentivized to by a system that rewards that behavior. Sure, they're doing the wrong thing, but they're also victims of a wider systemic issue. You know what I mean? Like those KKK guys, you know, I don't believe that they're like, all of them were just like, I don't believe that they were born evil or born even racist, but because
you learn things, eh? And you can learn hate and just as much as you can learn love.
And they're a product of that, you know. And it really, like, as much as like I'm not going to go try and like convert them to liking brown dudes with long hair. I also understand the humanity and the choice and the steps that got them to that place that they exist in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Fuck yeah. Beautiful, man.
Sorry, we got really deep. Maybe it's just because it's late at night and everybody's asleep. And
I know. I'm like 2 Coopers in. I'm like 4 shy of where I want to be. And no, this is good, man. This is why I like doing the podcast, because you kind of like, I love conversation just at its core, much like I'm sure you do. And now I'm lucky enough to fucking be able to just post it and so other people can hear it. But you just never know where it's gonna go, man. I mean,
totally, man.
You know.
And when would we have been like previously at a gig or something else like that? Where would we have ever had the opportunity to speak uninterrupted for a couple of hours and just like listen to each other and exchange ideas? And there might be different ideas, or we might sit at different, like where we both sit. It's like, well, that it's just interesting and it's fun. Right?
Yeah, I think it's good. And it's how you learn. I think it's how you keep learning. Like I listen to a lot of podcasts, not every day, but like every time I listen to something, I find like I learn something. Or you just listen to snippets of whatever it may be, reading an article in a magazine, reading a book, whatever it is. There's always something that you learn from it, and that's kind of the cool thing. Right now, like I'm in this conversation, I'm learning something. You know what I mean? So
before you go, what are your top 3 podcast listens at the moment?
As in, what podcast do I listen to?
At the moment, like your top 3, they could be your top 3 of all time. They could be your top 3 this week. What are you listening to? Because I commute a long ass way each way to work. So I'm always listening to podcasts. So
I'll be honest, bro. Like I actually, because I don't commute, because I work from home and I have like very, very short amount of time to listen to things. And it's gonna sound incredibly fucking, it was weird, but like I don't listen to anything that's like I rarely listen to many Joe Rogan podcasts, because they're like fucking 5 days long, and I'm like, who's got that much time? So I'll listen to snippets of his and go, yeah, that's cool. I usually seek out stuff, generally speaking, bro, that like I don't know about. So like Paul Chek is a guy that I follow. He's like a kind of like a, like he's a psychiatrist, but he's like really big on exercise and physiology and all that sort of stuff. He runs a whole thing called the Chek Institute. So he's like just amazing, man, Paul Chek. So any of his stuff I really lap up. I do like some sport podcasts, I'll be honest. Like I love Bloke in a Bar. I listen to Dylan Friends, which is like an AFL podcast. Again, they have guests and stuff, so I like those two. I listen to a money podcast, man, because that's like, finance was just something that was just so over my head for like the majority of my adult life. So over the last like 6 months, I've been like, Wait, what the fuck is compounding interest? Maybe I should have listened in school, you know? Yeah, so probably I listen to a lot of Paul Chek's podcasts. I listen to some Joe Rogan, usually more so for the guests. Like I actually clicked on the new Jordan Peterson one today, which is literally 4 hours and 15 minutes. I was like, oh my god, eh? But I really like Jordan Peterson, so I'm like, I want to hear his thing. I like Theo Von as far as like comedy goes. Um, yeah, probably those ones. Bloke in a bar when it's on. I will say though, like big disclaimer, it's rare that I start a podcast and finish that podcast before another one's come out. You're like, fuck. I think that's the same. When I look at my analytics, I'm like, there's no one that's literally sitting here every week, start to finish. There's a good chunk of people though, but yeah. What do you listen to, man? Just out of curiosity, then.
Our King of the Couch, of course.
Of course, mate. Yeah, shout out. You'll get that. You'll get that money after it, as we discussed.
I'm actually just gonna open up my podcast app. You know, it's funny when my partner and I met, our first date. It was a really good first date question. Actually, was what podcast are you listening to?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It was really
It's a good one,
It
man. Yeah, it probably
was
can really
really
tell
fun.
something. Yeah, tell you a lot about that individual. I don't listen to a lot of music ones, actually. Funnily enough, a
Yeah, I
big
mean, I'm really dependent on what the music ones are. Okay, so the last things I've listened to, the 7 a.m. podcast, which is a daily news and current affairs podcast in Australia.
yeah.
It's by the Saturday paper. It's like, oh, my phone just died.
How
It's
good.
actually
You're gonna have to
really
just
good
wing
because
it.
they do like a 15, 20-minute episode. It's a good one to like, where they just take a news item and
Mm,
just go a bit deeper with it.
yeah, yeah.
And it's like, it could be a lot of things. Like,
Mm,
so that one, um, it really depends on my mood.
yeah.
I'm a big fan of I love a podcast called You're Wrong About.
You're on about.
And
Okay.
if you go to their, like, they've just like the team that was the guy and the girl, they've actually he's just left recently, but
Mhm.
their early podcasts were cool because they'd take like an event that happened in, like, they'd be like Monica Lewinsky, and
Yeah,
they'd go into like how what the media perception was and where we were wrong about like all our perceptions around that. And like, it's really cool. They go through
yeah.
some
I
stuff.
appreciate those ones where people really like my show's just my life and I can riff on it sort of thing. But like those people that really dive deep on, like they've
Yeah.
really prepared for something, you know? So
What else have I listened to recently? It's weird. I've kind of been between stuff, but all sorts of just um yeah, I'm trying to think. So like, You're Wrong About, um yeah, I'm trying to think what else I've listened to lately, because I've just been, the last few weeks when I've been driving to work, I've been listening to music a lot. So
yeah.
I've been kind of giving myself a podcast break so I could refresh a whole bunch of podcasts.
Yeah,
So that
that's
I
that's my
absolutely.
thing too, bro. When I get in the car, I'm like, I could use this as like a bit of an educational session, but because I fucking froth on music, I'm just like, but I could also fucking listen to Motley Crue and just
Yeah.
like headbang all the way to the beach,
and
you
that's
know,
and that's
like
and that's going to give you a bunch of stuff that you've actually, that fits into your, like, what you've evolved, what we as humans have evolved, that's like a
yeah,
primal need is music. And
yeah,
but no,
100%,
the
yeah,
Cocaine and Rhinestones, sorry.
okay,
So I'm a massive country music fan.
yeah,
You
nice,
wouldn't
nice,
get to know it. But my uncle Jack, who was a 10-pound pom, wasn't really my uncle, but he came here from the very north of England to live
mm,
in Wellington near Dubbo,
yeah,
out in the central west, and he loved country music. So he got me into country music when I was a little kid. And so this podcast, the first season's all just random stories about country music by
mm,
but this season is just entirely about George Jones, who's like one of the greatest country singers ever, who
yeah,
was
nice,
also a massive fuck up. And yeah, it's just stories about that. I don't know. Like, that's about the only real musicy podcast I listen to, barring like,
yeah,
I'll listen to some episodes of Questlove's podcast depending on who they've got in,
yeah,
and
yeah.
some like audio nerd and producing podcasts. But again,
It's It's such a crazy world though, isn't it? Like it almost just like I never knew about podcasting, sort of got onto it, and I just liked talking. So I was like, maybe I could do it. It was like a year in the back of my mind. I went and did Dry July once, and I was like, I have so much time. I'm not drinking. I feel like I've got so much energy and time. So that's when I like started it, man. And then it really opened you up to like, there's literally a fucking podcast on every type of topic, sport, music, mental health, sex, fucking anything, man. Like, and it's crazy too. You can get incredibly niche with it. And I think that's like kind of the coolest thing about it. Every man and his dog too almost has a podcast nowadays. Like the biggest compliment that I get is like, it's good to see you stayed so consistent. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, thanks. But I know people that like have friends of friends that launch stuff. They'll do like 5 episodes, 10 episodes. They fucking spent money here, done this. They got all the bells and whistles, and I'm like, you've got everything except the fucking podcast. Like you can't. You're not
Yeah.
even talking. You're not. What's your thing? Like I don't get it. Like your logo looks great. The show name's great. You're great on Canva. You can edit a video, but like you've done 10 episodes and then their season's over. And I'm like, so that's just me being super critical. That's
No. I know what you mean. That's like,
yeah,
yeah, and some things I just don't want to listen to. But
yeah,
yeah, I do enjoy it. But I also think like there's something to be said for what you're saying before about like some days you just want to listen to Motley Crue.
yeah,
Is some days like sometimes I forget and I'll be like listening to podcasts so much and
mm,
I'll be like, oh, I should listen to some fucking music. And I'll
yeah,
put on Jellyfish and listen to their album Spilt Milk, which is just a pop masterpiece.
mm,
And then like sit in my car like almost in tears about how fucking great this band is and how brilliant their lyrics are
yeah,
and how awesome their harmonies are. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Music actually makes you feel good in the soul.
yeah,
And like podcasts are great entertainment, but when you need some of that soul food, put on some fucking good tunes and that will take you somewhere really
yeah.
good.
I get it, man. That's probably the best way to finish the show. I like that. I think that's a great little segue, mate. We've got so much more that we could talk about, but I think we'll have to let's wrap it up and we can do some more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll do
sure.
another one. Preferably
Yeah.
when it's not so hot, so I'm not constantly sweating on camera.
No, all good, man. All good. I'm due for a toilet break now as well, so perfect timing, mate. But look, fucking appreciate your time, dude. It was
Mate, thanks for
awesome.
having me. Thanks for having
Yeah.
me.
I didn't even get through the icebreaker question, so we'll do that next time.
Yeah, we
But
never did icebreaker.
nah, man, we're just straight in. I realized like 30 seconds after I said the first thing, I was like, this is the show. Like it's gone. The
Yeah,
opportunity's gone.
there's not going to be an icebreaker.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But for anyone listening, obviously he was in Hell City Glamours. They're no longer going, but go and check him out. You had a couple of albums, definitely a few EPs that I know of, and you're in another band now, Mucho
Yep.
Sonar.
The other band's called Mucho Sonar.
Yep.
It's kind of like heavy punk rock with a horn section, which is different. It's not ska.
Yeah.
And I also produce a lot of bands these days as well. And so something that I just finished up that I'm super proud of is the second EP that I produced for a band called Star Crazy. And anybody who likes rock, especially like it's weird. It's like 70s glam mixed with Jane's Addiction, mixed with it's cool. And I'm really
I'm
proud
gonna
of
check
the
it out.
record that they just did. So that'll be coming out in a few months. So
Yeah.
check out Star Crazy because they're really cool.
Yeah, fuck, I'll check that out, man. There was another band actually, just quickly. Was it the Fox Company?
Yeah, Fox Company.
Yeah, I must have been having a stalk on your Instagram before, and is it Blake Polton? Is he the guitarist in the
Yep.
band? Holy shit,
Mhm.
man. He was such a good guitarist. I went on just like half an hour just looking at all his stuff and all his pretty guitars that he had, and he was just
Yeah. I produced
awesome.
their last EP. It's called Hourly Rates, which was definitely a lot more dirty and rock than
Yeah.
their last one. And yeah, it was fun. It's fun to be a producer and a guitar player plays a solo that you can't play because I wouldn't be able to play some stuff.
Yeah.
And then tell him, I think you could do better.
Yeah, dude. You're just like fucking what's his name from that Metallica documentary? Hey, just telling Kirk, You know, like that's not good enough, Kirk. You can do better.
Mate, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be a producer, was that moment there is definitely
Dude,
one of the reasons why.
it's great. I feel like we didn't even get to talk about the production stuff. I really wanted to talk
Mate,
about that.
there's always next time. Have me back. I'm happy
Definitely,
to
man.
hang out and chat.
Mate, yeah, really appreciate your time. You're on Instagram, obviously, Mo Mayhem.
Yeah, no mayhem.
People can
Yeah.
people can suss you out. Any musicians listening, bands, whatever, get in touch. Yeah, man. That's it, man. This has been good. I feel like I haven't physically seen you, you know, like in such a long time, but it was almost like it's come full
That was a
circle
good
for me
catch
now.
up, man. It was really
Yeah,
good.
yeah, definitely, man. Shit, yeah, dude. Well, this episode will be out next week anyway. But good times, man. Mo
Yeah,
Mayhem,
thanks for having me,
everybody.
dude.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. That's King of the Couch, episode 127, I believe, with Mo Mayhem. We'll see you next week. We love you all.
Romance.